Do you realize that the only reason you can live comfortably under this roof is because of my efforts and sacrifices?
Suddenly, my son John poured the cold beer he was holding over my head. Beer flowed from my head down my entire body, and I was trembling from the coldness and shock. I looked straight into my son's eyes. In his eyes, I could feel intense anger rather than pity or concern for me. My heart was deeply hurt, and I even wanted to make a passionate rebuttal. I am Mary. Soon, I will be turning 60. Together with my beloved husband, who is 5 years older than me, and our dear only son John, we have done our best to raise him. But as soon as John graduated from college, he left home. Since then, my husband and I have been living a peaceful life, just the two of us. However, recently my husband started feeling frequent discomfort in his chest, so we decided to have him examined at a local hospital. The doctor at that hospital advised that more specialized treatment was necessary, and we obtained a referral to a university hospital in a major city. There were doctors at this university hospital who specialized in my husband's symptoms, and we were told that regular visits were essential for proper care of his condition. However, the hospital was far away, more than 2 hours by bullet train, and I was greatly troubled by this. The cost of each visit was a significant financial pressure. Additionally, we needed to go to the hospital every 2 weeks, and the transportation costs each time were quite substantial. While it is often said that the cost of living in the city is high, considering the transportation costs for frequent hospital visits, we concluded that living in the city would be more economical in the long run. As a result, we decided to move to a compact apartment located near the university hospital. Starting life in a new place and environment was more challenging than expected, and it was a series of challenges. Especially the rent in the city put a significant strain on our budget, and while my husband was advised to rest by his doctor, I had to look for ways to secure income. Considering my age, finding a new job was not easy, but the only chance I found was working at the cash register in a nearby supermarket. One day, while working hard for the future with my husband and to support our current life.
Mom, Dad, are you okay?
Surprised by the voice suddenly heard from behind, I turned around, and there stood my son John, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. Our life was by no means affluent, but I believed we were living a calm and satisfied life. Certainly, it seemed that John was dissatisfied with our modest and plain lifestyle, and when the opportunity to join a famous company in the big city came up,
I can finally leave this cramped space. I can't stand living in this suffocating, rural area anymore. This is the last time I'm here. I have no intention of coming back.
Since he left home with such a resolute attitude, we had not heard from him at all, and we didn't even know about his life or well-being. However, by a twist of fate, we happened to meet him again after many years on our way back from a medical appointment. I was a bit perplexed at his sudden appearance, but my husband suggested that we talk about old times, including everything that had happened in the past. And since it was lunchtime, we decided to have a slightly longer meal at a calm restaurant nearby. We surrounding the table and feeling a bit tense after not seeing each other for a while, started with updating each other about our recent lives.
Mom, Dad, if it's okay with you, could I live with you for a while?
We could only be surprised as he sincerely and suddenly made such request. According to him, he had repeated friction with a particular superior at the company he joined, and eventually, he had to abruptly resign from the prestigious company after a major trouble. Currently, he is looking for a new job, and it seems that he is thinking of staying with us for a while. On the day of this unexpected reunion, John no longer had the confidence he used to have. Contrary to his prideful appearance when he left home, he now seemed to be trying to overcome adversity. Seeing his changed appearance, we decided to open our home's door to him once again. However, since our living environment was not so affluent, we asked John to help with half of the utility bills and rent as a condition. Then one day, after my husband visited the hospital for a regular checkup, and I returned home, John had also come back from job hunting. When I gently asked him, "The end of the month is approaching, can we receive your share for the household expenses?" There was no answer at first. Thinking he might have missed my voice, I gently asked the same question again. He then told me that he was short on money, and because he had just returned home, he wanted to be exempted from this month's payment. We were also living a frugal life, so we were surprised at John's proposal, which was different from the promised arrangement. We tried to persuade him positively, explaining that this was not what we agreed on, when suddenly,
Enough!
He raised his voice and handed me $50 from his pocket. At my son's disrespectful attitude and the act of throwing money, all I could do was stand there in astonishment. Afterwards, I could hear him muttering under his breath with a barely audible whisper, saying things like "so stingy" and "what a miser." It was a bit scary to ask him about his current situation, but I mustered up the courage to inquire about his future financial plans.
You're really greedy. I'll pay you the remaining amount later.
He raised his voice in response and immediately stormed out of the house. Sadly, the only money he handed over that month was the $50. This was far from the initial agreement, and since our financial situation was already tight, it added an extra burden to us. Moreover, in the following months, John avoided payments using the "I don't have money" excuse, only occasionally handing over small amounts of money, never attempting to pay the full amount. Despite not paying for rent or utilities, he ate more than usual, stayed up late with the lights on, and took prolonged baths, showing a wasteful lifestyle. As a result, living with him caused our household expenses to more than double, making our monthly life even more difficult. My husband and I were facing serious problems, feeling it was getting hard to maintain our daily life as it was. Pushed to our limits, we had to make a decision regarding our son. If he couldn't stick to our agreements, we had no choice but to attempt to kick him out of the house. However, this attempt led to an unexpected reaction. He began to violently kick the furniture around the house. He was very well built, and neither my husband or I could restrain him, let alone confront him physically. To make matters worse, once he got angry, it wasn't easy to calm him down, and trivial matters could set him off again. As a desperate measure, we locked the front door and even used the safety chain when he was outside the house. However, this backfired, and he started yelling and banging on the front door. He even reported to the police that he was being locked out by his family. All I could do was apologize repeatedly to the responding police officers. Living with the risk of an explosion was very tough, but we resolved to educate our son properly, ensuring that he wouldn't face difficulties in the future due to his character, as he was our son after all. To manage the increased living expenses due to our son's return, I decided to increase my working hours in my part-time job. 3 months have swiftly passed since, but our relationship with our son remains strained. However, my husband's health has significantly improved, providing us with a sense of relief. We managed to reduce the frequency of his medical appointments from 2 to 3 times a week to once every 6 months, deciding that it was best to continue monitoring his progress under an agreement with the hospital. At that moment, my husband and I held each other's hands, sincerely rejoicing that we had finally overcome a significant milestone. We had considered enjoying a lavish meal at a high-end restaurant too extravagant, so instead, we decided to have a modest but heartfelt celebration at home. However, there was a risk that our celebration would be ruined if our son joined us for dinner. Thus, we opted for a slightly extravagant lunch celebration. We headed straight to the supermarket, and for this special day, we unabashedly placed some expensive, premium quality meat that we wouldn't normally buy into our shopping cart, and made our way home. That day, our son had left the house for a job interview, saying he wouldn't be back until the evening. While my husband took a bath to relax, I immersed myself in carefully grilling the high-quality meat we had purchased. Just as the steak was perfectly cooked and a pleasant aroma began to fill the air, I suddenly heard the front door open. Even though I thought it couldn't be, it indeed meant that our son had come home early. Before I could ask "Why are you back so early?" my son exclaimed,
"Oh, what good meat."
and grabbed both of the freshly cooked steaks from the table. Even as I shouted, "Wait a minute, that's not yours," my son left the room as if he hadn't heard me. He forcefully grabbed my arm, easily shaking me off, and headed to the kitchen. He took a beer bottle from the fridge, started chugging it directly from the bottle, and began to eat the steak I had carefully cooked, standing up without any hesitation. "I've had enough. You haven't paid for this month's groceries, let alone the rent or utilities until now." My patience ran out, and I yelled in anger. "This was a special meal to celebrate your father's recovery. Even if you are my son, I absolutely cannot forgive this," I said, to which my son sighed deeply, his face a mix of anger and disappointment, and approached me with big steps, holding the beer bottle he had opened. Fearing that he might get violent, I reflexively raised my arms and closed my eyes. However, I was suddenly overwhelmed by a feeling of wetness on my head, and when I opened my eyes, my son was not hitting me, but pouring beer over my head.
Do you realize how much I've been doing for the family? I'm the one taking care of Dad during the day. You can go to work because I'm at home looking after him. I even make sure he takes a bath. I'm proud to fulfill my responsibilities as a family member. Yet, you accuse me of doing nothing just because I haven't paid yet."
As I raised her voice in criticism, my son muttered complaints about how much he had been taking care of them. As soon as I opened my mouth to argue, my son forcefully threw the empty beer bottle on the floor. Shocked by the sight of the shattered bottle and the loud noise, he suddenly shouted even louder,
"Is money all that matters to you? I'm taking such good care of you all, and all you care about is money. I've had enough of a greedy mother like you." If you're so unhappy about me not paying, then please leave right now.
The noise of the breaking bottle made my husband rush out from the nearby room. He immediately grasped the situation and stared sternly at our son. With a heavy heart, I looked at my son, wishing to avoid any more confrontation. "All right, I'll leave this weekend," I replied, to which my husband looked down, clearly shocked.
So you still plan to stay in this house for another week?
Conceal his irritation. He sighed exaggeratedly and left the room without thinking of cleaning up. I started to pick up the pieces of the broken beer bottle and clean the liquid from the floor. My husband soon joined me, silently helping by my side. While feeling pained by my son's attitude, I wondered how things had come to this point and sighed heavily. A week passed, and the day for us to leave the house finally arrived. Since we had sent the bulk of our belongings in advance via courier service, only small bags and everyday items remained. Right after my husband left the house after his final check, I locked eyes with my son. He smiled sarcastically and made a dismissive gesture with his hand, as if to shoo me away.
Don't keep me waiting, you greedy old lady. You never appreciate the fact that I take care of you, treating me as nothing but a penniless loser. That's not what a parent is.
That's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Just how much have you been helping your father? My question seemed to instantly ignite his anger. Normally, I would try to deflect his anger, but today was different. Thinking this might be our last time seeing each other face to face, I just couldn't hold back all the emotions that had been building up inside of me. Thanks to you taking good care of Dad at home, I am able to work outside, right? But when I'm away, you just enjoy yourself watching TV, and even ask Dad to prepare lunch, don't you? And about bathing him, are you really helping? Don't tell me you're playing mobile games in the changing room after helping Dad bathe, claiming that as your caregiving duty. In reality, the so-called caregiving by my son seems to be in name only, and I can't really expect much cooperation from him. I couldn't see any sense of responsibility in him for taking care of his father. Whenever I questioned him, my son would just get angry and raise his voice, but all he would say are vague phrases like "I'm taking care of him, and you should be grateful," without a single word about any specific actions he's taking. What I do every day includes preparing meals, cleaning the house, shopping, and other daily chores like taking out the trash. On the other hand, my son's main activity at home seems to be just reducing the contents of the refrigerator. I remember him strongly insisting not too long ago, "I will properly pay the rent and utility bills, so please let me stay in this house." However, far from keeping his promise, he does nothing but boast about taking care of everything every day. I've asked him to leave multiple times, but after seeing his violent attitude, I just stood by helplessly. But today it ends. In a few weeks, he should think about standing on his own feet. I decided to firmly tell him, "We can no longer take care of you." Even as I felt his intense stare, I slowly closed the large door of the house. There was no sound of footsteps from behind. He didn't follow me. Late at night, I received an email from my son, void of any gratitude for the care I had provided in the past. I never thought he would forget the parent-child bond and my efforts for him so easily. I went to bed without replying, only to receive another more aggressive email early the next morning. It was filled with curses, calling me an irresponsible mother, a person not worth living. Thankfully, it was the only email of the day. Almost a month later, while I was focusing on my work, my phone buzzed nonstop with an influx of messages from my son. I paused my work to check the message history, only to find hundreds of unread notifications. I answered one of the calls and heard his voice.
"What are you thinking, you stupid parent? Why can't I live in that house anymore?"
Before I could connect my words, my son was already questioning the situation with a mix of haste and anger in his voice. "How many times do I have to explain? I told you that this house requires a lease renewal every 3 months. From the very beginning when we decided to live here," I calmly argued back. He might have been planning to secure the house to enjoy his personal time to the fullest. However, the fact is that during the time we lived there, the lease was continually renewed every 3 months. The apartment we temporarily rented as a family was for the sake of my husband's continuous medical appointments. However, fortunately, my husband's health has been gradually stabilizing, reducing the necessity for medical attention. Given this change, we decided not to renew the apartment lease. By the end of the next month, we would no longer be able to live in that apartment. I have communicated this decision and details to my son several times, making it clear that if he wishes to continue living in that apartment, he should make a new lease agreement on his own. However, my son showed a surprising reaction, as if he was hearing this information for the first time.
"This is the first time I'm hearing about this. Why is this happening?"
Stop joking. I informed you about this matter in advance, several times. I even left the necessary documents for a new lease in the apartment for you. So if you intend to continue living there, you should handle the formal lease agreement on your own. If you can't do that, then you have to accept the consequences. And please proceed with the procedures urgently, so as not to cause any unnecessary trouble to the management company. I responded in this way and ended the call before my son could voice more of his dissatisfaction. To be honest, I was genuinely surprised by his attitude this time. He has a decent educational background and even experienced working at a major corporation. I can't understand why he is behaving so childishly now. A few days later, he contacted me to inform that he had moved out of the apartment. In reality, he had not been seriously job hunting and had run out of the salary he earned from his previous job. Financially strapped and unable to pay the rent, he had no choice but to leave the apartment. When I saw the words, "I'm going back to your house," I involuntarily reached for the phone in my hand.
Don't tell me. You didn't sell our family home, did you? That house is filled with my childhood memories. Why would you unilaterally decide to do something like that?
Actually, that house was too big for just the two of us now. Plus, we haven't heard from you in over a decade, so there was no opportunity to inform you about selling the house. Back when our family's finances were stable, we built a spacious house optimal for raising a large family, including potential future grandchildren. But one day, John suddenly left home. Since then, there has been no contact, and he has gone missing. Concluding that we can no longer expect him to return, we decided that handing over this house to a new family was the best decision.
But shouldn't you have talked about such an important matter at least once? And where is the money from the sale of the house? That was supposed to be my future inheritance. I think I have some say in the matter of its sale.
Confused by my son's absurd demand, my mind became muddled. Indeed, the house was from my husband's family, but now another family has started a new life there. John, from now on, we do not intend to report our new whereabouts or activities to you. We do not plan to tell you our new address, and with this, we intend to cut ties. I calmly explained, ignoring my son's angry voice, and hung up the phone. Afterward, I took a deep and long sigh to calm the emotions welling up inside me. A few days later, my bad premonition turned into reality, and my son was arrested by the police. Despite us repeatedly explaining the situation in detail, he went to the land where our former home used to be.
This was originally my house. Leave this place immediately.
We received information that he protested loudly to the family now living there. Thankfully, we had informed the new residents about our son's condition and whereabouts in advance. They were cautious and promptly called the police when he suddenly tried to enter the house. He strongly asserted his ownership of the house to the responding officers, refused to listen to their persuasion, became enraged, and apparently assaulted one of them, entering someone else's house without permission, breaking a window, and assaulting a police officer. His actions accumulated, and he was ultimately arrested on multiple charges. Afterward, we sincerely apologized to the affected family and neighbors, bringing them a gift of sweets. We again requested them to keep the information about our new relocation secret, and they showed understanding. Using the funds we obtained from selling our previous house, we quietly started a new life in an unknown place. Near our new home, there are medical facilities, spacious parks, and well-maintained sidewalks, perfect for daily walks. We wholeheartedly wish to spend peaceful days here while maintaining our health.